Okay. So, what are the key elements that are there in the use case diagrams? When we are preparing the use case diagrams, what are the key elements that we require to prepare a use case diagram?
So first of all, you need to have an understanding of the actors that are coming into play as well, which include both the primary actors as well as secondary actors, and having an insight into what activities are using certain elements, what kind of activities are extensions of what particular activity, what activities are compulsory, so that you can get a sequential flow, I would say, and allow your users of that use case diagram to have a great understanding and have clarity.
So, what are the challenges you have faced as a BA in the last project?
So one of the main challenges that usually come forward is with managing change requests, because often if you give the floor to the stakeholders, they would want all possible improvements and whatever they can get from you. So narrowing down the change request is mainly the main challenge that I've normally faced. And how I manage is I always I never would decline from doing it, but there is a process that I go through. I would usually connect with my technical team, my PM, and I would also look at the scope and reevaluate that. Based on that understanding, I go back to my stakeholders and question them as to why they're requiring this change, and why do they feel it's important, what made them decide, or what decision process they utilize to come up with that change. And this, based on that, I would give recommendations that brings about clarity as to whether the change is actually required or is something that we can move to another project.
Okay. So, how frequently the client is coming up with the changes?
So usually within a given sprint, I've noticed that in my past project, it was usually every sprint there would be 1 to 2 changes, which doesn't seem a lot. But if you think about it, for every particular sprint, it becomes very challenging when they're asking you to do some kind of rework. And based on the requirements, it seems that it is not relevant. And it's something that, moves us away from the scope of the project.
Okay. Okay. Project in which you are, which elicitation technique you have preferred and why you have used that elicitation technique?
So in the current project, usually elicitation techniques are defined by the senior business analyst as to where they find is the best approach. But usually, given the type of work we do in the space we are in, I would normally go for interviews or workshops to gather information and details. And at sometimes when there isn't any clarity and we're just trying to figure out what possible solutions or ways there can be to improve on something, we usually go for brainstorming.
Now tell me, what is the difference between workshop and a brainstorming session?
So in a workshop, usually there is clarity as to what is being achieved. There is a sense and an understanding of what the solution is, whereas in a brainstorming, there isn't enough clarity of what the requirement would be. So in order to gather those, we find creative ideas and explore different spaces so that ultimately we can narrow down to what would be the viable solution.
Okay, just a minute. Okay, good. And what are the characteristics when you're taking requirements? What are the characteristics of a good requirement?
To define the characteristics, I usually use the SMART model,
Okay.
which helps me ensure that the requirement is, first of all, it's specific to the objective. It's I can measure it in some way. It is a reliable requirement, and it's time bound so that there's sense of time, because in a project space, um, it is very difficult to say if you don't have anything time bound, then you won't be able to measure it or give some um, allotted time to it. So using the SMART methodology, I'm able to make sure that I have a requirement that is usable.
Okay. And